Call order the regular meeting of the Simsbury Planning Commission, October 28th, 2014. And thank Ken and SCTV for taping. We don't need to seat alternates. And the first order of business under our two public hearings is application 14-01 of Ed Valley and Associates, Inc., agent Randy E. and Shelley Swinford, owners, requesting re-subdivision of the property located at 5 Pinnacle Mountain Road, map H11, block 106, lot 001, to create two lots, zone R-40, opened 9/9/2014, continued 10/14, and public hearing is to be concluded by 12/18. Herm?
Just a couple of things, Mr. Chairman. At the last meeting, a number of comments were made by the public with regard to parking on the roadway, and the commission asked me to check with the police department and the fire marshal with regard to what could be done about that. I just this morning got a copy of the letter from the fire marshal. Gave me a one-line email, and you've all got that as well. But just let me go through the police department memo if I could for just a second. I think you've all got copies of that as well. Petition signed by individuals from 10 residents on Pinnacle Mountain Road was recently received by the town of Simsbury. The residents who signed the petition have asked that designated no parking sections of Pinnacle Mountain Road be established, specifically the areas where the road curves from number 5 through 15 and number 20 through 41. As the town of Simsbury Chief of Police and Legal Traffic Authority, I am currently reviewing the request. Upon investigating the request, I am providing the following information. Between 2010 and 2014, there were only 3 motor vehicle accidents on the street, 2 of which were caused by deer, and the third was caused by a car that accidentally went off the roadway. Secondly, sight distances for vehicles parked on the roadway meet and exceed state requirements. This means that vehicles traveling on the road have ample time to see vehicles parked ahead of and on the side of the roadway. The Simsbury Fire and Public Works Departments found no problems or issues with the current signage on the road. And then he finishes by saying, I am writing to advise you that if the standard no parking on pavement signs are installed on both sides of 3 curved areas of Pinnacle Mountain Road, the residents who live in these areas would no longer be able to have guests or contractors, including landscapers, park on the street in front of their homes. If the signs were put into place, homeowners must realize that the maintenance of the landscape, i.e. lawns, still remains with the property owner, and the sign is not a homeowner's option. The specific addresses that would be affected are number 5, 8, 10, 11, 15, as well as number 20, 26, 28, 32, 34, 38, 39, and 41. Visitors to these homes would be allowed to park only in the driveways or on the grass shoulder completely off the roadway, which may cause property damage to lawns. If vehicles are found parked in the designated no parking on pavement areas, they would receive a parking ticket, but the area would not be considered a tow zone. Please contact my office if you have any questions. I will advise you once I have reviewed all the information and make a decision. Signed Chief Peter Ingerson from the Simsbury Police Department. So I think that addresses at least what the question was put to the Chief of Police. He's continuing to look at that with those options in mind, and he will advise us, or advise the petitioners actually, once he's made a decision. I'm sure we'll get a copy of that as well ultimately. But in terms of it affecting the subdivision, I think the answer is pretty clear that it doesn't affect the subdivision per se in this particular situation. Fire Marshal's one-liner, as I said, you have a copy of that as well. And basically he reviewed it with regard to his requirements and found no violations of the town ordinance with regard to emergency access for fire vehicles in that area as well. The only other thing I think that's new since perhaps the last meeting is that the Conservation Commission also reviewed the application and found that because of the steepness of some areas of the site, they want to make sure that when a final site plan for actual construction is developed, that there be specific attention paid to no cutting of trees in those very steep areas. So, you know, should the commission decide to approve the application, recommend that the Conservation Commission be consulted along with the town engineer prior to any actual construction. It would involve the utilities perhaps underneath the road, as well as any on-site work as well. So Those are the only new things, I think, since the last meeting, so if there are any other questions you have, or public has any other comments, they feel free to go ahead.
This is a public hearing, so I think we'd like to hear from the public first. Do they comment to the chief's letter or anything else? Just give your name and address, and appreciate you being here.
Peter Albertson, 16 Pinnacle Mountain Road. I was a little disappointed in the report that they feel that there's no danger to the curb traveling up there. My question now becomes, the property needs to be developed. It will probably take 6 months at least for all the construction. As you know, because of the steepness of the property, there's no place to put any vehicles from the construction point of view. So we'll have a permanent parking situation during the 6 to 9 months of construction, I suspect. What does the town plan to do for that? What should be required by the construction to protect us as we travel up and down that road every day during site development and construction, because there's no method of off-site parking for the construction vehicles. You can't park on Terry's Plain Road either. So therefore, we will have a permanent situation for a period of at least 6 months of construction, of constant parking in a very dangerous part of that road. And granted, we haven't seen any accidents yet, but do we have to have an accident before we will recognize that parking there is inappropriate? So my request of the committee, if you approve this subdivision, some requirement that during the construction phase, that either police be present, or you have those signage people, or whatever it takes to control traffic around the parked construction vehicles, be mandated as part of the approval of this subdivision. Thank you.
And that does affect the subdivision.
I'm sorry?
My point is that does affect the subdivision as opposed to the former comment that parking does not affect the subdivision. Do you understand my legal point?
No, I got it.
You got it.
There's one other issue that was raised with the fire thing about a cistern, and the fire marshal has stated there's a cistern with a 15,300 gallon capacity there. And I don't know, when I read this letter like you did 10 minutes ago, I met with the chief and looked at the site. They took photographs and did sight lines, and the police department is governed by whatever the state statutes are and their rules. And but the chief understands your concerns. I went in there to see him to see if, I mean, you as neighbors have to make a decision if you have a party or a wedding, or the people who do your lawns, do you want them to be in your driveway, or do you want to have buses? I mean, that's a neighborhood decision. It's not under our privy, we're just here to talk about the subdivision. But one alternative I discussed with the chief, and I don't know, this is just my idea, was if you don't want to go with the legal thing, maybe a private sign at the bottom of the mountain saying, please respect safety and such, number one, drive slow, whatever you want to put up, please don't park on the street. It would have no legal effect, the chief said, and they would not ticket people for parking the street, but at least it would get your message across. But as a homeowner, you have to decide, do you want these signs, number one, in front of your house all the time, your beautiful bucolic setting, and two, do you want to have your guests ticketed if they disregard it and park there? So it's not the preview of it's not our business, so to speak, and the chief, I think, is more than willing to talk to you about alternatives. And,
May I ask a question?
of course. And please speak loudly, because I have trouble hearing.
I'm having trouble understanding. Are you saying, you're saying it's up to the residents of the street to petition the town to put the signs up? It's not a vote that we take to do that, I don't believe.
No.
So I'm trying to understand who has the authority to put signs like that.
I believe that You could put a sign up that said, please no parking on the street.
But that carries no, as you just said, carries absolutely no legal ramifications. So who has the authority to put a formal sign that the...
Oh, the police department, as he said, as I understand his letter, they would do that.
So if I requested those signs go up, it'll go up?
It would be considered. You'd
Yeah,
have
it would be
to-
considered.
They would consider it. But if they decide, okay, well,
If the
thank you, Dr.
neighbors-
Albertson, but we don't like the idea, then we're back to where we started from.
Well, one person doesn't dictate.
You know, the
That's my
neighbors-
question.
If you had your
Petition.
neighborhood or you had a petition signed by most of the people on your street, I'm sure they would acquiesce to your request. If only one person did it, I mean, it does come down to,
So what you're saying,
A majority of
and
people
again, I'm just
agree.
asking questions. It's up to the citizens living on Pinnacle Mountain Road to put such a petition or request to the town, and they would consider whether to grant such a petition.
correct.
Exactly.
Correct.
That's my understanding. And all my point was that if I lived in the neighborhood, I'd want to think about the pros and cons. And, but the chief was, he'll bend over backwards to listen to you. And again, they took photos and sites and did measurements, and he'll show you those diagrams as well. He wanted to make sure that he was within the code.
And then, again, point of question, during the construction phase, which is actually my biggest concern right now, is that the same issue? We, as a neighborhood, have to petition the town during the construction phase concerning what the parking regulations will be or not? Or is that something that you have the authority to make when you grant the subdivision, that there's some specifications that have to be met with to develop the property? Because that's what I think you have the authority on, and that's what I'm asking you to do. That if you grant the subdivision, it has to be developed. You, I believe, have the authority to dictate what is part of that development, and I'm asking, is a concern about the construction vehicles be incorporated into your decision-making?
I'm not sure if we do have that. I have to check with Hiram, and check with
Two things.
Does that
I
mean
don't know the
you'll-
answer to it.
So that means we'll continue this hearing again 2 weeks from now?
No.
Let's-
Let's see what he says.
Two things. One is the petition that you mentioned has already been submitted. The chief has that, and it's under consideration now. It's pretty clear that he said he's going to advise us when he makes a decision as to exactly what's going to be done. He outlined the options there as to what they could do, some of the downsides to that as well. So the petition's already been filed, and he has it under consideration, so you don't have to file another one. Should
Is
the-
that for parking in general or the construction period?
I never saw the petition. It came from 10 residents on Pinnacle Mountain Road and was sent to
I don't
the...
think it covers construction.
So I did not sign such a petition, so I don't know.
I didn't sign one either, so
So
can
this is an
we,
independent.
can we amend the
Let's go one at a
petition?
time and speak, if you want to speak. I'd like to get it on the record.
Yes.
Yeah, I suspect that if you want to send an additional letter, or an individual letter to the chief, I'm sure he would put it in the same package and consider it the same way with the other 10 residences that did sign on from before. So I would encourage you to go ahead and do that if that's what you'd like to do. I would also say that, depending upon what the other issues are that the commission has, that the commission certainly can mention copy of the letters for approvals or denials always go to all the departments in the town. So should the commission make any comments about what it would like to see or make sure happens during a development process, copy that'll go to the police chief as well, so that'll go in his file as well. So happy to do that, if that's what the commission decides to do.
May I comment?
Yeah.
Bob Lawrence, 12 Pinnacle Mountain Road.
Could you please go up to the...
Yeah.
Sure.
Thanks.
When this is in some sense about, if you can't have a parking restriction, what can you do to attenuate both current issues and perhaps what happens in construction? First of all, I'm really amazed that all this siting meets regulation, because if there's vehicles parked and somebody swings out and somebody's coming from the other direction, it's a blind drive, that's clear to all of us. And when I brought this up with my wife, she went on and said, oh yeah, it can be misery, and she said, at least, this is a few weeks back, and she said, at least, they should put some kind of cones up or markers, which occasionally happens when the lawn maintenance people are at 8. It's not regular, but at least there's some warning. that when you turn the corner, you're gonna run into vehicles parked on the side. And can that be mandated to anybody who's parking, whether they're individuals going to a Thanksgiving Day fair, or lawn maintenance people, or construction people? Because at least some warning about what's gonna happen when you turn this corner would be helpful. Is it, I'll just ask, is it possible to mandate something like that with some kind of penalty, so if the lawn guy doesn't do it, you guys collect $1,000?
I would say with construction sites, that's the norm. There are cones, and if there's a bulldozer parked around the corner, the cones, or there's a sign, whatever. I see it in West Hartford all the time, and so, and we will, per what Hiram said, we will request that whatever the correct procedures are, that we could, if we approve this, we will make that part of the recommendation. Yes.
Sue Benarzek, 119 East Weetag Street. As a former planning commissioner, I'm kind of dismayed by some of the answers to these questions. In the past, when we had any type of construction going on in town, the town planner and the town engineer would dictate how things were done and would go out and check on various things. And we saw when the Drake Hill Mall got revitalized that that thing was basically left to its own devices. And handicap parking was blocked for 2 weeks, and we had all sorts of issues. That doesn't happen anymore. And I'm not quite sure why we don't have that anymore, but we don't. And the other thing that dismays me is part of the staff's job is to go back and review the initial subdivision way back when it was done and find out why this lot was actually not developed. Could it have been the steep slopes? Could it have been, incurred drainage issues? There's a reason that this thing was developed as it was. And perhaps, I know you guys are used to saying yes, but you might want to maybe exercise a no once in a while if it's not appropriate. And the reality is that this just seems like there are more problems than not problems in this particular subdivision of one lot. And I'm just kind of dismayed because there's no reference to the old subdivisions. I mean, it's very disappointing to me to see that, the town has just gone totally, away from real review for any type of thing that comes in. It's just amazing to me. So that's what I have to say.
I'd like to address that a little bit. This original development was quite a while ago, and technology has changed quite a bit, and I'm not even going to venture a guess at why the lot wasn't developed originally. The information that we have indicates that the application is consistent with the subdivision regulations, and that's what we use to make our decision.
But there's always a review that the staff is supposed to do. History, you're supposed to get history. There is history that exists. It's in the town clerk's office. It's disgusting. 180 grand flushed down the toilet.
I just want to follow up again. I appreciate the reassurances given by the committee, but I've learned in life reassurances are great, but ultimately who has the authority to implement and decide? So what I keep asking is, who has the authority to regulate parking on this street during the construction phase? Not we'd like to make recommendations, or yes, there are assurances. Who ultimately has the authority? Because I assumed, and that's what I'm asking, that you do have some authority on how this property is developed. If you do not, that's okay. I just need to then understand who does, so I can approach them. Because I agree, making assurances that hopefully somebody will put cones out during construction, etc. That's great, makes me feel good, but I've learned if they don't do it, who do I go to, and what is the fine, and how do you implement that fine? So without the knowledge of who actually owns this authority, and that's what I'm asking in my question here, If you don't know tonight, I fully understand. But as a citizen in this town, somebody has that authority, I assume. And I'd like to know who it is, and I was hoping that you all could express that tonight. If you don't have it, somebody else must, and let me know where to go next. That's all.
Robertson, in the chief of police letter, he's the town of Simsbury chief of police and the legal traffic authority. He is the one with the authority to regulate that, period.
So he is listening, he will get your recommendations
He will,
concerning.
he will, as I said before, if the commission approves it, or if they deny it, he'll get a copy of whatever they decide to do, copy of the minutes, copy of the approval letter or denial letter. But he is the legal traffic authority, he's the one.
And his decision final, or is that appealable?
Well, I suppose they could go to court if they wanted to, but he has the ability to impose fines, whether it's traffic tickets or speeding fines or whatever.
And that's
So,
chief of police, you said?
chief of police, yeah. Here, I'll give you a copy.
And that would include during the construction phase?
Sure, absolutely, yeah.
We can
Now,
make
I've seen, in
recommendations.
the past, I've seen zoning as a condition of approval.
That's what
Say-
basically I'm asking.
Say, for example, that in response to concern of neighbors, the construction couldn't start till perhaps after 8 o'clock in the morning because of the noise and all that.
Yeah, we've relied on kind of a gentleman's agreement. We do not have a noise ordinance. We don't have a construction start and ordinance in town. When we first came here, I tried to write one and it was not able to get through the Board of Selectmen for approval. A couple of other things too. First of all, people need to understand, this is just a subdivision of a lot. There is nothing that says that this is going to be developed right away or 6 months from now or a year from now. This is simply the division of the lot, and I suspect that the owner is attempting to sell it at some point. Whether that sells immediately or not right away, we don't really know.
But that's very relevant, because the sales price would be contingent on any covenants placed on the condition of the subdivision. If there's a covenant placed on the condition of the subdivision that says that parking or how the construction vehicles are allowed to play out, that directly impacts the value if they're trying to sell. So to say it doesn't matter is not true, because we all know any covenant attached to a subdivision will affect the sales price. So therefore, it does fall in your purview, and that's why I'm asking. This is a major concern of a lot of the residents, and particularly the construction phase is a major concern. So my request is that some type of covenant be put on the subdivision that addresses this concern that you've seen many citizens bringing to you. And that's why we think it is relevant to the subdivision. I don't want it to be just handed off to the chief of police, because that will be forgotten 2 or 3 years ago when this sale comes up. But if a covenant is attached, it has teeth.
Hiram, we have the ability to put a covenant on public roads.
No.
No, but on the subdivision.
Let me just try to, I was almost to the point where I was trying to, so the first part of it is simply the subdivision of the property. The second part of this is, should anybody purchase the lot and then come in to develop the lot, they have to apply, they have to provide a site plan. That site plan will be reviewed by the Conservation Commission. It'll also be reviewed by the town engineer, also the fire marshal, obviously for access. It'll also be reviewed by staff for things like erosion and sedimentation control. And often when lots are developed, the driveways have to create an anti-tracking pad so that mud and things are not tracked onto the road. So we would look at that site plan when it comes in, if and when it comes in, to make sure that those things are taken care of. As part of that review, this letter, say it's approved, and all the things that are mentioned as part of the letter, the stipulations or modifications to it, will all be put on that site plan at that time. So whoever buys it, whether it's a year from now or 6 months from now or 5 years from now, will have to go and obey those particular conditions. So it's not called quite a covenant, but it's a modification or a stipulation that's put on the subdivision approval. And that's how that works. So that's our process.
Which this panel has authority over, is that
Yeah.
what you're saying? So you do have authority over it. That's all I'm asking.
Has anybody explored whether or not this property has a covenant on it? Because I know I have a covenant on my property that says that I can't cut down any trees without consent of the neighbor in the boundaries. That came along with when I bought the property. Is there, and I was told that these kind of covenants were put in place when the whole area was originally subdivided. So is there a covenant applying to this property? Has anybody investigated that?
Those are private covenants. If they were put on the subdivision back in October of 1975 when we did the research on the original subdivision, They would be put on the deeds as the property transfers from individual to individual. But those private covenants cannot be enforced by the planning commission. Those are enforced between neighbors, and you probably have the ability to enforce that between the neighbors or between the association or whatever. But the original lot owners have that ability. That's not a town authority.
But it
Are there
does-
any deed restrictions on this lot? Oh,
Ann Wild, 5 Heather Lane. Are there any deed restrictions on this lot? Can either the planner or the owner or the engineer?
Not that I'm aware of that would have an effect on this application. Mr. Chairman, might the applicant have...
Mr. Lally?
Thank you. I think one of the things I've accomplished in the last 45 years, besides learning how to speak to commissions, is learning how to listen. And while the neighbors may think that some of their comments fell on deaf ears, they did not. First of all, for the record, my name is Ed Lally. I'm a licensed professional engineer and land surveyor. And I've been asked by Randy and Shelley Swinford to present their application for a re-subdivision of 5 Pinnacle Mountain Road. I won't go through the buildable area and other criteria because I think that was all addressed at the last hearing, unless you would like to hear that again, but I would imagine not. Since then, we had a meeting with the Conservation Commission. They act as the Inland Wetlands and Watercourses Commission, but they did not act in that behalf. They acted in authority of enforcing your sedimentation erosion control ordinance. And erosion controls that were added to the site, many of them were on the plan originally, but erosion controls that were added included gravel construction entrance, as was mentioned. Notes on the water main installation to make sure that the road is kept open to people who wish to access the subdivision at all times. Silt sacks at the catch basins that are down gradient. Temporary soil protection, dust control, permanent seeding, concrete washout area, which is one that's not usually used on a small construction site. It's a hole in the ground so that concrete trucks wash out there, not in the gutter, not in the woods, but in one specific spot to control that erosion and control that pollution, potential pollution. Turf reinforcement mats, outlet protection, temporary stockpile area, seeding and stabilization notes, litter control and construction sequence. We also have Farmington Valley Health District approval, and the town engineer asked us to add some notes and details on the plan. What we didn't add to the plan yet, because the question of who has authority and what was the town police chief, traffic authority individual going to do, we didn't add any details or notes on the plan concerning parking. What we did do was we added a construction sequence, which was reviewed by town staff and commented on, manipulated, and changed in accordance with their comments, which requires that certain things happen. The first thing being that before anything happens, they have to notify the town staff, set up a pre-construction meeting, meet with the town staff, and get sort of the exchange of contact information and exchange of any concerns that the staff might have at that time, because we might not be able to address everything that the staff thinks about when the final plan comes in. With the comments on parking that we heard last time, what we did was we had a small turnaround area and a fairly narrow drive, and we enlarged the turnaround area so you can park 3 cars down in the turnaround area. You can park 3 cars in front of the garage, put 2 cars in the garage, put 3 cars behind the cars there. So there's parking on this site for a very large number of people after the CO is issued, and people have a party on Thanksgiving and invite 20 of their closest friends and relatives. What we haven't addressed was the parking during construction, and we're willing to offer the following. We're willing to put a sign up above the project and below the project that says construction ahead on the left or right side of the road, depending on which way you approach the sign, and the sign would be put up with the town's permission. Would warn anybody who's not familiar with the situation that construction is about to begin or is taking place, and the sign would be taken down after the area is stabilized and construction takes place. Additionally, we would propose that parking only happen on the straight part of the road, and we would be willing to put a sign up there during construction saying contractors must park downhill of this sign.
That'll keep the issue of coming around the corner and being surprised by a bunch of cars or vehicles parked on the side of the road. In this area, if you've gone out to the site, the shoulder is about 20 to 25 feet wide. The first 15 feet of it is very gently graded. We'd be willing to park our construction vehicles whenever possible on the grass snow shelf. It's gonna mess up the grass snow shelf, but when we're all done, we're gonna stabilize all areas, re-topsoil, re-loam, fertilize and seed. So that's not a big issue. So the parking would take place on the pavement down here, off the pavement, through the area that is currently cleared and currently grassed. We went out there and actually measured sightline distances to determine if the sightline was adequate according to state standards, and it's adequate for a speed in excess of the speed limit that's posted on the road. And I would assume that most of the, oh my God, there's people parking on the road and I might hit them, comes from people driving well over the posted speed limit. Posted speed limit is 25. There's construction going on in my neighborhood and we have to take a detour, and the street we detour on is posted 25. And nobody drives 25. It's painfully slow to drive 25. So I think that a good portion of the problem that does exist is that people are driving their comfort level, which is a comfort level that's often suddenly lost when they come across a landscaping vehicle or something else parked on the side of the road. The sightline distance in both up the hill and down the hill is more than adequate for the selected driveway location. We don't believe that the plan will, final plan for the final house will deviate very much from this, because this is approved by Conservation Commission. It uses the less steep portions of the site. Conservation Commission has already said they don't want us putting a house or any infrastructure on the more steep portions of the site. The plans that were submitted to town include a graphic that shows the more steep and the less steep portions of the site, and Conservation Commission is well aware of that. They're going to look at the final plan when that's all done. So I would imagine that the final plan, with the exception of the fact that the house dimensions are probably going to change a little bit, it's going to look very similar to this. And I believe that with the inclusion of the offered signage, posting, so parking on the pavement takes place on the tangent or the straight section of the road, and parking in the area of the construction activity only taking place on the lawn area adjacent to the pavement, and the fact that the construction sequence requires us to clear this site and then rough grade the driveway and parking area adjacent to the job, that's going to end up where the contractors are going to park, because there's plenty of room down in that location, and who wants to carry all your tools from the street all the way down to the site and back again? So I think with the acceptance of those items that are offered by the owner who lives in the neighborhood, I think that the situation, for the most part, has been addressed. The big crowds that park on the street on Thanksgiving and the landscaping vehicles that park there almost every day of the week are not going to be addressed by this. If you have any questions of myself or my client, I'm happy to try and answer them. Thank you.
Hiram, when town staff meets on a project like this, is it the Director of Public Works and the town engineer, or you, and who are those people?
Fire marshal, building official, town engineer, myself, or assistant code enforcement officer as well.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Longley? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate
I
it.
do have one maybe for you, Mr. Lally.
Yeah.
Has the subject of fee in lieu of open space been settled?
Hasn't been settled, it was briefly discussed.
So is that something you can speak to?
Sure. The regulations, which I have a copy of, and I'm sure you're familiar with, state that there's two ways to do it. One is $2,500 per lot, and the other is to have an appraiser appraise the property, and have the town have an appraiser, and have them discuss it. And if they're too far apart, have another appraiser come in, and then I'm not sure where it goes from there, because I didn't read much beyond that. I got to the part that said $2,500, and that seems to be set up for this. If you had a 50 acre parcel of land, you're going to put 20 lots on it. The town says, you know, there's really not any place we want for open space, and the developer says, I really don't want to give you any open space, but I'll pay you some money. Then it would be appropriate to go out there and go through this process. But two things, this is a small piece of property, and you're going to spend $5,000 on appraisers before you come to a value of the property. And number two,
the regulations specifically speak to the property's value in an undeveloped state. And the town has assessed this lot as a building lot. So how do you figure out what that much is worth in an undeveloped state? It's difficult to determine. And so I think this process of either hiring an appraiser and coming to a conclusion, or paying $2,500 was set up so that when you have something that's small, that still should contribute to the town's open space, that the fee in lieu of makes perfect sense. You know, we've looked at the property, and I mean, this is, it's nice and it's green and it's a buffer, but it's gonna be nice and green a buffer if you don't take it as open space, and it makes no sense to take it as open space. At least not to me. If you like that part of the property, I don't think it fits into your plan of development or any of your recreational plans. I think that $2,500 is best spent on some other recreational amenity for the town.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have just one question. Would you be willing to put in like the portable speed bumps at the beginning and at either end of the construction to appease the?
That's something that, well, first of all, if you have portable speed bumps, I'm the president of the Latimer Point Fire District, and we don't like portable speed bumps because they break the frames on the fire trucks. Because the fire trucks don't slow down to 3 miles an hour, 5 miles an hour. When they're rushing to a fire, they have exceedingly stiff suspensions, and when they hit those, ba-boom, it's a big shock. The other thing is, if we say, yes, that's not a problem, we may end up with a lot of people objecting to speed bumps on the street. And thirdly, if it's in the snowplow season, they're not gonna last but one storm. So, you know, that's, I think the problem is self-control if you're talking about slowing down traffic on that road.
Thank you.
Other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. I'm sorry?
Anyone else for public speaking?
Yeah, go ahead, yeah, but anyone else, comments, questions?
hearing?
Yes.
My name is Dr. Michael Rinaldi. I live at 32 Pinnacle Mountain Road, and I want to speak to this project. This is the Darling Estate. First development was done in 1972. At that time, can you put your thing up there? At that time, the portion of land that were under discussion was originally proposed as part of open space. That site became 7.2 acres because it was not acceptable. And the open space was put up between 34 and 36 Pinnacle Mountain Road. This has been going, this is 40 years now since the development. There are six or seven of us left who are the original people who bought into that development. There's also about 7 or 8 people who've lived there more than 25 years. So it doesn't change over too much. The problem, when I came here the last time, I said the problem was this parking problem and the dangers of these 2 curves on the hill. Mr. Drake, I believe it, didn't see the connection between my problem presently, which is at 28 Pinnacle Mountain Road. He didn't see that because I don't think he understands. He's not been up there. But for 25 years, we've had a problem there. Police have not been able to enforce it because there is no ordinance that says you can't park on either side of the road. You can park on both sides. Park as many cars you want, and it's not enforceable. Second thing, he'd understand the problem at 28 Pinnacle, 30, actually it's 2 lots, 30 Pinnacle Mountain Road. He'd understand problem that planning had in the original development. The problem was these are 2.5 to 3.14 acre parcels. On 28 Pinnacle Mountain Road, they decided to build 2 large houses and connected them together by a hallway. And they say it's an addition. Well, what happened was they built a carriage house on it and 10-car garage in the back, which they have no access to. They have to go through 30 Pinnacle Mountain Road to get back there. They also put a business there. C-Tech is operating back there. Zoning does not enforce the law. I've been to zoning, they can't find anything wrong. So my problem is, that same problem is gonna happen down here, because there's no on-site parking. He tells you there'll be parking there. The fact of the matter is, people come and they park. They're not gonna go into that little driveway. They're gonna park on that street, and there's no control over it. Police department can't enforce it. Okay?
Have you seen the letter the police chief gave? You came in late, maybe you haven't seen the chief's
No.
letter?
But unless they put, as I told the chief, and we both talked together, if you don't put all the way up and down that hill and around the 270 curve and the 180 curve, if you don't put not only no parking, but tow-away zone, because 28 Pinnacle Mountain Road, they'll pay the parking ticket. They can care less. Okay? You have to take their car and take it away, and that will not occur. Okay? So our problem is, no matter what rules and regulations you say will take place, they will not happen. We have definite evidence that shows it doesn't happen. I've got 100 pictures here, dated, that show they cannot enforce the law. Now, I talked to Harlan Peck. He says, well, the building methods have changed since 40 years ago. Building methods haven't changed. Building materials have changed. They could always put a house there. But if you go up Metacomet Road, if you go up Talcott Mountain Road, go up Pinnacle Mountain Road, you go up all these roads going up the hill, there's no houses built on those slopes, none whatsoever. People realize you can't put things there. There's no, and when Mr. Drake brought up the fact that, you know, this is planning, what do we do with parking here? Well, I did some research. You know, parking, traffic control is part of planning. It truly is. And you can't subject us up there to this abomination where desperate people are doing a very desperate thing and putting us all at risk. Because this will definitely become a huge problem until somebody gets killed. Now, we've already had 2 near big accidents up there on 28. Coming around this bend, you can go 50 miles an hour in the wintertime. You can't stop. You slide right into the curb. If there's a car there, you're done. So what I'm saying is that this doesn't lend itself to development. It never has. 40 years it stood there. Now, why is it being developed today? Well, that has nothing to do with planning. Okay? Nothing to do with planning. But these are desperate people doing a desperate thing for a desperate reason. And they're subjecting us all to this potential harm. Now, when we bought up there, we didn't expect this to happen. And it's wrong. Zoning does not help us. We have a place up there which is out of zoning. It's out of control. A C-Tech truck just came out there this afternoon, loaded with panels. And where did they go? Guess where they went? Right up the street. Guess who lives up the street? 1, 2 guesses? Nothing is being done. This is a problem. It's a 25-year problem. It's just going to be aggravated. If you don't believe me, talk to me, come to my house. I have photos, pictures, videos, you name it. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Yeah. I'm Pamela Albertson, I'm at 16 Pinnacle. One thing that I think that may not be noted on this and all, yes, we do have area on this part of the street that's developed versus this which currently is undeveloped. And there's a lot of area beneath it that is not developed. But the house that's adjacent to number 5 is number 8. And they do frequently have gardeners and landscapers that have 1, 2, sometimes 3 different vehicles there. That's one thing, okay. We kind of anticipate cars and trucks on one side of the street. My concern is if we have more cars and trucks slightly beneath it or literally right across from it, that does pose a bit of a problem. Then that curve does become rather treacherous. I walk that area, I kind of know that is, we're always moving over when somebody comes down that hill. And we also have the problem, if not during this time of year, in the winter time, and it's been mentioned here, when that road is slick, and the town does do a very good job of trying to keep up with the snow and the ice when it comes down, but when that road is slick, you do swerve, no matter how slowly you're coming down, no matter what you're driving in too. So that's a problem, and getting up that hill, then when there's a possibility of maybe vehicles on either side or both sides, I think is even more of a concern. So that's really what this is all. It's not to deny someone the ability to build, but I really wish that we could consider some other alternates just to protect people when they are on those curbs. Those curbs are dangerous, in spite of the fact that we haven't had any bad accidents there yet. I don't know. I hope we don't, you know, but I think they are very, very problematic.
I think, Mr. Llewellyn?
Very brief rebuttal. It's a horrible, dangerous road, and for 25 years, we haven't had an accident. People are at least aware of their circumstances and they're driving accordingly. This is a dead-end street, so virtually everybody that uses this street either lives there or has probably been there to mow the lawn or do something like that before. If we're not parking on the street, except down from the curb, and by the way, the driveway to the house on this side is uphill. The driveway to the house on the other side of the street is actually uphill of our driveway that comes out here. So their driveway is in about this location. I doubt that a lawn maintenance guy parks here and walks 300 feet up the hill to do his work. So I would imagine that they're parking in that area. We're saying we're not going to park on the pavement during the construction process. We're going to park on the tangent, we're going to park on the tangent part of the road. If we park on the road, we're not going to park on the curb. We'll park on the shoulder off the road, and we'll park on the site. There's not much more we can do about that. The fact that there's a problem up at the top of the hill at 25 or 28, that has nothing to do with this. What has everything to do with this is, do you have planning and zoning regulations? Do you have subdivision regulations? And do we meet them? And are there health code issues enforced by the Farmington Valley Health District? And do we have their approval? And does the Conservation Commission enforce sedimentation erosion control? And have we received unanimous approval from them? I think this is a land of law, not a land of men, and we have met all of the requirements. And I believe staff would have told us otherwise. And along the line they did, and we made some changes. But now I believe we're in complete conformance. We've done what we can to address the situation that would exist vis-a-vis traffic and public safety in our area of the neighborhood. If the police chief decides to post both sides of the road and it's a tow zone, then we'll all suffer the results of that. But in the meantime, it's a public street which we've said we will limit our use of during the construction process. And we've also provided, in the comment of there's no parking on the site, that's all conjecture and falsehood. There is parking on the site. We've modified the plans to provide parking on the site. We've added offered provisions to protect the public and to provide for safety. And we respectfully request your approval. Thank you.
Can I respond? He said there's adequate parking. You got five places to park a car. The problem is, what happens when more than 5 people are there? And it's not only what happens when more than 5 people are there. It's because people don't park on a narrow driveway when they have easy access, just park it on the street and walk across and walk in the house. This is our problem right now. We have parking available at 28 Pinnacle Mound Road in a small area that easily cars could go in there and park, but it's not convenient. They have to go in there and they have to fight each other and turn around. They just rather park on the road. The problem is that, well, everybody who lives up there obviously familiar with the problem and they'll avoid it. Problem isn't only us. Problem is other people come up there. Yesterday, in front of 28 Pinnacle Mountain Road, there was a car from Massachusetts parked on one side and a car from California packed on the other side, and the school bus couldn't get through hardly if I was coming up the hill. Our biggest problem, believe it or not, is the school bus. When the school bus, we call it the Yellow Rocket, when she's coming down the hill, okay, and there's cars parked on both sides, she takes the middle of the road, and if you happen to be on the other side, you're dead. But yeah, we know that she's coming down here at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and at 7 o'clock in the morning. How many other people know that? Like I said, 3 near misses at 28 Pinnacle Mountain Road. There's never been a miss at the 270 curve in front of 7, is because it's very rare that anybody ever sees a car parked there, except the people who cut the grass there, and they park this big pickup truck with this long extension of that carries all their equipment. And then they put cones up. We had to stop the guy and say, you know, the cones don't help if you put it right in the back of your trailer. You got to put those cones about 20 feet up so we know you're there. But these people aren't going to put cones up. They're just going to park there. Remember, if you go up Metacomet Road, if you go up Talcott Mountain Road, if you drive any place in Simsbury, last night I was going up to attend the class up at the middle school, that terrible road and on the way up there, there's nobody parked there. If anybody parked there, they get nailed. People understand you can't park on this place. And when they developed this area, they knew that. You can't put a house there. It may meet all your so-called means, but it doesn't mean parking, let me tell you. Thank you.
Again, Peter Robertson, 16 Pinnacle Mountain Road. I listen carefully to, I'm sorry, I don't know your name, Ed's rebuttal. And I just say to codify the comments, or to not memorialize the comments made, which is 1, restricting parking only to the straight edge. 2, all construction vehicles have to park off-site, meaning on the shoulder, not on the road. I understand that. I only ask, since they are stating they will comply with that, please, when you approve the subdivision, these statements are included in your approval, with some fine if they are not upheld. That's all I'm asking. Because we're told that these considerations will be given to us. Yet I'm afraid when we walk out of here at 9 o'clock tonight, we've somehow forgotten a year or two now when construction actually appears. If it's part of your approval and included as one of the conditions for developing the property, it carries many more teeth and allows us to come back 3 years from now, if there is a problem, to begin to address those issues then. So I'm just asking if, as part of your approval, because it does affect the purchase price, it is part of the planning, that you include these considerations as part of your approval.
I think we can include the considerations, but we cannot include fines. That's correct. Is that correct, Myron?
Depends on how long they violate it for. We do have the power to fine for zoning violations, you know, but again, that's a matter for the police chief if it's on the road, so.
So do we or do we not?
We don't really.
Okay.
We don't have that.
Right. The police chief, the police do certainly, but we don't.
But my request is to give us as much power as we can, because we all know it's great to have something that says you ought to do that. But if it's more convenient to ignore something for 6 months, frequently, unfortunately, best intentions aren't. So I'm just asking you as a planning commission to give us, to our residents there, who will have to suffer through the construction period, as much ammunition as we can to protect our commute up and down this road, which we know frequently is going to be hazardous and will be very hazardous during the construction phase.
Just for the record, we have no objection to putting notes to that effect on the face of the Mylar that the chairman will sign, and it will go on the land records and be part of the land records forever. Thank you.
And
Can I-
the two issues here, that we have to.
Can I say one more thing? Because this has to do with enforcing planning and zoning laws in Simsbury, okay? What's happened at 28 Pinnacle Mountain Road, okay, we can't solve that problem. It's not solvable. Zoning says the places, they can't get access to the place to find out if it's in zoning compliance, okay? We know it's not, but they won't enforce it. Planning says Hiram says he wasn't there when they let that happen, okay? Our problem is, what happened at 28 Pinnacle Mountain Road, zoning and planning did not do their job. The same problem's gonna happen there, but it's gonna be even worse, because it's a worse portion of the road. And I think if this goes through, you're gonna put us in big trouble. Thank you.
So I started to say there are two issues here. One is, forget the subdivision for a minute. You as neighbors have to make a decision, work with the police department, and figure out whether it's no parking signs each side of those two big curves or whatever. And I can't, it's not our venue to do that.
I
The
think
second
I'm sorry.
issue we're discussing.
I think we just need to say it straight up. We have no jurisdiction over the parking situation on that road. The only jurisdiction this commission has is over what happens with the subdivision and possibly the covenants we can put in there for how it gets developed. So you're sort of barking up the wrong tree for us to solve your parking problems.
But we are sympathetic, and this is brought to light. The chief is involved now, and what Mr. Lally says is true about the rules, and we haven't discussed speed limits, but I think the chief will work with you, and I think after this meeting at some point, you as neighbors should have a meeting with him, because that's his responsibility. And as, you know, if I live there, would I want those signs, or maybe just at the curves? And your point about the cones before you go around the corner, those are all good points, but they're not in our jurisdiction. And we can't answer for what happens at the top of the hill, because, again, that may be zoning, it may not, but it's not our thing. I'm comfortable with what Mr. Lally says, and he's been doing business in this town with other projects. I haven't seen, and I've lived in town since '80 or something, I haven't seen us ever have with construction projects a big problem before. Because usually, because of the meetings that Hiram's gonna have with town staff, and what Mr. Lally's agreed to put in the documents, I think we can cover that. And so I don't know if anyone else from the public has any other comments based on that. Miss?
I'm Ann Weld at 5 Heather Lane again. I just wanted to ask a question of Mr. Lally.
I missed your, where do you live on a mountain?
No, I live on 5 Heather Lane, down the street, off of East Weeton Street.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Concerns.
But basically, my question is to Mr. Lally, in terms of when you have done other subdivisions and you've said that applicant and you're willing to put construction sort of conditions on for the parking on site, have you done that in other towns? Is it enforceable? And who has done the enforcement primarily?
Well, if I may answer.
I mean, just really trying to get to the root of the matter of the concern that
Okay. The reason we, if I may answer your question, the reason we offered it to the commission is that I'm not sure the commission can impose such a rule or regulation on a subdivision application. So to jump over that hurdle, the applicant has offered, and the applicant's right here, and you can nod agreement if you would.
Absolutely.
Okay. So the applicant's on the record, and I'm his representative. We have offered these things so that there's no question as to whether the commission can impose. Because if we offer something as a part of our plan, you are approving that plan. And that includes all the parts that we've offered. And so this has been done before in other cases. Enforcement is usually done by the zoning enforcement officer. The threat is always that we'll stop your job. And you can stop a construction job for 78 different reasons, or maybe 178 different reasons, and every contractor knows that, and every contractor wants to be on the good, not every, virtually every contractor wants to be on the good side of the zoning enforcement officer because he might be a little guy, but he's got a really big stick. He can just say, I'm shutting this job down until you address that situation. And that situation doesn't even have to be related to the parking, because if the job's going well and there's no problems with the neighbors, everybody's happy and the job goes well. If the job's not going well and there are problems because they're parking on the pavement, then he points to some dirt on the pavement and he says, I'm stopping this job until that dirt's cleaned up because it says on here that I can do that.
Right, there's already conditions
there's-
from the Conservation
so-
Commission about the erosion
Right,
control.
right.
So this would be.
if you could find me a construction site with absolutely no dirt or dust on the pavement, I'll find you a construction site where they can park wherever they want, because then they're gonna argue. But here's the problem, nobody wants to argue. These tradesmen wanna get their job done, wanna get out of there so they can process an invoice and get paid, okay? And so the threat of, we can shut this job down for any number of reasons, is not even spoken. It's understood by anybody who's been in business for very long. And so the signs go up, the person who comes in to meet, the first item on the construction sequence is call Mike Glidden, and I gave his phone number, because he's the zoning enforcement officer, and set up a meeting with the town staff to exchange contact information and find out restrictions on the project. And the first thing he's gonna say is, look at this big note right here, which I haven't put there yet. It says blah, 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 don't forget that. And so the contractor, he wants to just build the thing and go home. He doesn't want to argue, he doesn't want to get into arguing with the zoning compliance officer or the code enforcement officer or the building official. And I've seen guys who try to buck those people and they don't get very far. So it's whether the police come out and do it or the zoning enforcement officer or somebody, there's a couple of different ways to enforce that parking situation. You're in violation of your subdivision approval.
Right. I mean, I was just questioning
teeth.
that in terms of, almost as part of the
I
erosion
can't
control.
quote you the part of the town charter that says this can happen, but pressure can be put on these people to obey the rule, and nobody wants to go through that.
Thank you.
But it's not happening now. Zoning is not enforcing their laws.
Well,
Zoning's not doing it.
that has to do with statute. I feel for your condition up the road with a resident who is running a business. And for whatever reason, statutes say you're not allowed to do that in a residential zone. But there must be some grandfathering in, or he's outside of a non-conforming. After 3 years non-conforming, and the town has very limited, unless they want to bring the town attorney against him as far as running a business in a residential section. And that's where you would have to take this. Zoning and planning don't have any jurisdiction there. It's already gone by that. This is a zoning problem. And so you have to take that up in a proper venue, and this is not it. And I feel for you, but I can't do anything about that.
But I understand that.
But we are here to discuss 28 Pinnacle Mountain Road.
We're here about the land rights of this individual right here.
I'm trying to tell you what happened there will happen here.
I hear your point, but we aren't here to discuss that. I understand your
But
concern
after
as a
construction-
result of one property, what'll happen, and we got that, okay? But we have to limit our decision to this particular subdivision application.
I think we have the construction part handled, okay? What happens after construction?
That's what
or
we're worried
before is, I believe that no one wants to start a war. He didn't come in to do a two-lot subdivision to start a war with the neighbors, no one. We have to assume that the glass is half full, not half empty, and we have to work for positive ways to solve it. And I think you have the chief's attention, and I think with the town staff, they'll help you. But again, it's not this venue.
You know, I do understand your authority, you follow your regulations.
Or lack of authority.
Okay, or lack of authority. But this really is, to me, some kind of lesson learned, because your action by approving this, I feel sympathy for this guy at 28, but that's up the road, okay?
Yeah,
We all
doesn't
get.
bother you.
We're all, no, all right. But we are here to talk about what happens at 5. And everybody has visitors, okay? And in the winter, Thanksgiving, it snows in Thanksgiving. By putting a house there, people are gonna park in the road. So you are creating,
if you
your
decide-
action is creating a problem that we don't currently have. we have enough exposure to lawn maintenance trucks and whatever to be aware of what could happen, but you do this and you create a problem. And somebody mentioned that, you know, and then you're just basically saying, well, we're sympathetic and good luck with the police chief.
No,
There's a consequence
I
of
don't
your
think it-
action of creating a problem that we didn't have before. And I'd just like to make that observation that some kind of better connection between, you know, one person creates an issue, there should be some connection to the resolution of that issue.
The testimony of 2 public hearings is this has been an ongoing large problem, and it's not going to change unless something is done either with the neighbors or with the police chief working together. And again, it's not part of the subject matter tonight. And we've done, you know, so I really encourage you to work on that. I think we've solved the construction, parking thing, and what happens sign-wise, you as neighbors have to make a decision what you want there. And do you want limited sign? And again, the chief is very knowledgeable, he's a very nice guy who will work with you to understand, but I can't, we can't solve that here tonight.
He hasn't helped us.
Anyone else from the public like to speak? Okay. I recommend that we close.
I make a motion that we close the public hearing.
Second?
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. All right, commissioners? Let's start with fee and lieu. Thoughts on that?
If we don't take the $2,500 and you do end up hiring 3 appraisers, I don't know if $5,000 is an accurate figure, but I'm sure it's more than $2,500 that we would spend. From what I recall about the fee in lieu discussion we had, is it was designed for small projects like this to avoid the expense of multiple appraisals. So unless somebody comes up with something I don't understand, it does seem to make sense to me to take the $2,500 to agree to that. Maybe there's something I don't know, and I'm willing to learn.
Well, this is gonna be a 4-acre lot after subdividing,
3 point
No,
something,
I believe that's right.
roughly 4.
2.7 or something.
That's possible.
Yeah. So going rate for, buildable lots is about $50,000 an acre,
So you're saying the numbers would be greater?
could be. But much of this property is not developable.
Yes.
Well, then the question is, how is it evaluated? How is it,
I think it would end up being
Assessed.
opinion against opinion. So if this subdivision regulation, a subdivision application is put forward for some type of decision, I would be in favor of the $2,500 fee in lieu of open space.
We have to consider, if we were to approve this, they could give us property at the end of the street there as far as open space. It wouldn't matter because it's unusable for anyone's use, and it serves no purpose for the town, it only creates a liability for us. And they could easily do that and it wouldn't affect them in the least. So I would take what we could get, and $2,500 is what we assumed for a project of this scope and size, and the worth of the property involved here. They don't have to spend a dime. They can give us that piece of property and we have all the liability. So it seems to be a no-brainer to take the fee in lieu of, because it is such an unacceptable piece of property for our concerns, and it connects to no other piece of property that we have in town that we
we
would
don't
like
like
to
the
use.
property?
Correct.
I think we're agreed on it.
And we came up with $2,500 specifically for this. This is the perfect application for that fee.
Other comments? All right.
regarding the fee in lieu of, or comments in general?
Yeah,
Well, I think we're a little ahead of ourselves. There would be no fee in lieu of if we don't approve the project.
That's right.
So we should be
If
talking
we
about
approve
approving
it,
the
it starts
project
on
first.
No, I think the fee in lieu of it is the first determination that you need to make, Mark, on this. And then I would make that a separate motion, you know, assuming you all agree on that. And then you can decide on whether you want to approve the subdivision or not. Or the other thing too is, if Alan still had a question on the value, I'm happy to check with the assessor before your next meeting too, if you want to find out whether those numbers are accurate or not. Happy to do that too, whatever you want to do.
In my opinion, we don't need to debate it anymore.
I'd agree with that.
So there were three things I think Mr. Lally mentioned with regard to parking, construction signs ahead, parking only in specific areas, parking on the snow shelf off the pavement. Fourth thing was the fee in lieu of question. And the fifth thing that I recommend is that the final review and approval of the site plan be reviewed and approved by the town engineer to include any road cutting, erosion sedimentation controls be reviewed by the Conservation Commission. So those would be the typical things that would be in the standard.
So what is the power of the note on the Mylar that talks about what they agreed to, the changes in parking? What's the power of writing that on there?
We would look at that when the site plan comes in, and make sure that they
We
comply
being
with that.
town staff,
Correct.
and town staff would say, look at these notes on, that would happen.
Correct.
Look at these notes on the Mylar, we expect you to do that.
Correct.
That would happen.
I would expect the residents to enforce the Mylar.
Sure, I'm sure we'll know immediately if it's not enforced, and we'll.
I'm sure you will.
Yeah.
We've heard a lot of testimony from residents regarding the safety of the roads, especially the configuration of the road, vehicles parked in the road, and the preamble of the subdivision regulations state that part of our duty is to assure the health, safety, welfare, and convenience of its residents. I know we have the letter from the chief giving his opinion that there is no issue, but personally I'm not convinced. So I do have a concern of what this subdivision may do to the safety of that neighborhood.
I've driven up that road, but I've never seen cars parked on that curve, so I.
Well, since there's nobody
that.
living there.
Nobody's been doing that. Anytime there's construction, your neighborhood changes. When they were getting rid of the soil up on the north end, the neighbors complained that there were clods of dirt all over the road then. I'm not sure that was.
Yeah, I think the
Stuff
construction
always-
period to me is a temporary situation.
Seems that's controllable within
Yeah,
reason.
but it's the permanent situation of a new driveway and a new possibility of
Well, they
cars
widened the
parked in the
driveway.
road. Sorry?
They widened the parking in the driveway to accommodate more cars. Unless, I think Ferd's probably right, if they want to press for no parking, that would be the only street I can think of like that. If they want to press for no parking signs up and down the street on both sides.
Well, it wouldn't have to be up and down. It would have to be just in specific areas if they were so inclined.
Well, we can't require that.
No, but the
No,
police
but they
chief
can
I think
require
if the neighbors want to do that,
If they want to do that, they
cover the
can-
curves.
they should think twice, I think, but
Well,
they
that's
can do that. That's their problem.
correct. Now, let's walk back to why this street is the shape that it is. Because it's a requirement for a certain pitch that has to have to put that road in so that all these people can actually live up on that mountain. And so it comes with the hazards of living up on that mountain. It was the only way that they're there. If not, we couldn't do a 15% incline, which would be a straight road right up the street. So it comes with the territory. So we have to consider that a little bit. And just because they got to move in and we want to stop everybody else from moving, and that's not quite fair either, because there are land rights, there is property rights here at stake. Now, there are ways around the concerns of the citizens who live on that street. Now, Mr. Lally also pointed out that it is a cul-de-sac. The only people who live there are the people who are concerned. Very few other cars other than construction vehicles during the course of the day. And you don't have those during the bad weather seasons of the year. So granted, there could be a whole lot of reasons why there might be an accident there, and we can apply 100 different possibilities. But to sit here and suggest just because somebody wants to put a house there that there's going to be a business going there and there's going to be 100 cars parked out on that street every day is foolish.
Yeah, well, yeah, I agree. We can't consider the rest of it.
I understand, and it's an emotional issue, and I'm concerned and I feel for these people, but that's a separate issue. We're here for deciding what is appropriate as far as property rights for the individual who owns this property. He qualifies under all of the criteria that are set forth in our regulations. Now, there is a safety concern, and they're willing to address that. And there is a safety issue that is outside of this application, and it's the dangerousness of the road. That can be solved by the neighbors getting together and deciding that they want parking restrictions on part of that road. They go to the appropriate jurisdiction, which is the safety control officer of the town, which is the chief of police, and make that happen. But it's not our purview.
Agreed. You can also install one of those, you're going 26 miles an hour rather than 25 miles an hour. You know, there are all kinds of...
Well, it's not like we have common traffic going through there. These
I
are
know.
all residents. So their speed is, and their difficulty with this road, they know all about it. It's not like they're being surprised.
Okay, back to the issue. Any other discussion, or do you want to think about a motion?
Can you just repeat the qualifications, Hiram?
Yeah, there are three general areas. One were the parking signs with regard to construction ahead, Mr. Lally offered.
On both sides?
Well, I think
Both directions.
I would talk to the town engineer and the chief before deciding the exact locations, but I would certainly say that was offered by the applicant, so that would be one. Parking only in specified areas, parking on the snow shelf off the pavement.
Specified areas being the straight.
Yeah, correct. And again, I would run that by the town engineer and the chief to make sure, we'll put those areas, you know, on the plan. And then the second thing was the fee in lieu of open space item, if you're in agreement on that. And then the last thing that I recommended would be final review and approval site plan to be reviewed and approved by town engineer and conservation commission, including the road surface cutting.
Hiram, the last one would be at the time of building permit?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
The construction sequence appears on the drawings, Mr. Lally?
Yes, it does.
It does.
Pretty lengthy. That's the water construction sequence. And a separate one for, hold on. That's the litter control plan. Here's the construction and road control notes, construction, waste and litter, hold on.
Sheets 2 and 4.
Pardon?
Sheets 2 and 4.
2 and 4, thank you. They gotta move around to make room for some other things. Yes, there's the construction sequence. The title isn't bolded, but this is for the water and the work in the road, and this is for the site.
And you said earlier that you increased the parking, off-street parking to 5 cars or 7 cars?
There's at least 3 and possibly 4 spaces in the turnaround area. That's the turnaround area. It's 40 feet wide, so you could fit 4 cars there. There's space for 3 cars in front of the garage. That's 5. Everybody can back out, nobody's blocking anybody. The residents could have their 2 cars, if they have only 2, inside the garage. So we're not talking about residents, we're talking about 8 visitors. That does not include parking behind any of these cars, so every one of them could.
How long is the driveway?
This is a 40 scale plan, and so that's about 3.5 inches. So there's room for more cars than, that's be 140 feet. There's room for a few more cars in the driveway.
Which would block the driveway, but right.
Right, I mean, but if it's Thanksgiving, you know, everybody comes, stays for a few hours, and they all leave. But you could have at least 5 cars plus the residents, without blocking anybody. 6, actually.
Bill, what was that regulation or paragraph that you read as far as public safety was concerned?
It's the preamble, section 1 of the subdivision regulations.
Could you read it for us?
Yeah, this is just, okay. In order to secure the orderly and coordinated development of the town of Simsbury and to assure the health, safety, welfare, and convenience of its residents, the Planning Commission has adopted these regulations regarding the subdivision of land.
So would you make the inference that public safety in this case is a major concern for our approval or disapproval? And that would apply? Or is that a broad statement that says if the subdivision itself is creating a problem as compared to a public road which is creating a problem? Seems to me there's a difference there.
Mhm.
Now, once again, one is potentially causing a public nuisance, I'll call it, on the public road
Yeah.
because of the parking problem. But that's the only place that I have a problem with potentially ruling one way or the other, because there is a safety problem. And I don't know how far we should take that.
Right, so the road itself as it exists poses a
problem
possible
already.
safety issue. Does the subdivision exacerbate that?
Hmm.
In this particular case, at least, the question is, assuming we solve the construction part of what we just discussed,
Yeah.
is adding one driveway to this road, is it in violation of that paragraph you just read?
It's not the driveway, it's people parking
Well,
on the
it's
street.
And that exists on the whole street as well
Yeah.
already.
Right.
So we have a dangerous situation already that exists. Not necessarily here. Now, is this necessarily going to add to it significantly or enough to deny property rights? And the report from the safety control officer of the police department suggests not.
It does suggest not,
And that there are alternatives that can help solve that problem
and will the
with the.
person who resides in that house park on the street, or will their guests or not, we don't know.
Well, you can't control the guests, but it's not like everyone has guests every day. We're talking about 5 or 10 times a year.
Right, and the opportunity to minimize parking on the street has been accounted for in the plan.
Correct.
To minimize it.
As far as
Minimize
construction is
parking, yeah.
concerned.
Or even permanently, Mark, because of the increased parking spots and the turnaround and.
True.
I just want to say, right here in the memo from the chief, bullet item number 2, site distances for vehicles parked on the roadway meet and exceed state requirements. This means that the vehicles traveling on the road have ample time to see vehicles parked ahead on the side of the roadway. It meets requirements. We're not talking about a road that doesn't meet standards.
And
that's an official.
subdividing the lot wouldn't change that.
Correct.
In my estimation, subdividing a lot would not affect that.
Hiram, am I right to think that I can't say anything now that the public hearing is closed, since I'm not a seated?
Right.
Okay, never mind. Thank you.
Hiram, one of the other conditions that the applicant had stated was including signage
Yes.
during the construction. Was that one of the items
Correct,
that you
yes.
read?
Correct.
Yep. Looking for a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the application 1401 of Ed Lally and Associates with the stated conditions that Hiram stated earlier.
Construction conditions.
Construction conditions.
To be so noted on all of the
Mylar.
official Mylars and subdivision plans submitted to the town. Could you repeat those for us?
Sure. First were parking signs with construction ahead, parking only in specific areas we did designate on the plan, parking on the snow shelf off the pavement only. The other, next item was the fee in lieu of open space is offered in this particular case and accepted by the commission.
Would that be necessarily put on the plan?
Yeah, probably not a bad idea, you know. Then we have a permanent.
Official record?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Can we
then,
put a value with it?
yeah, sure, we can do that. Final review and approval of site plan to be reviewed and approved by town engineer, conservation commission, including road surface cutting at the time of the construction.
He also said about parking on site whenever possible, aside from the snow shelf. Can we add that too?
I would think that would be included, but that's,
think so.
Off-street parking covers it.
that'd be
I think so.
Thinking of the neighbor.
up to you. I mean, I would think they'd be parking on site unless they park in
I don't
accordance
know
with.
why they wouldn't want to, but.
These parking things are strictly, you know, pretty much during construction. That's
Right.
essentially it. And then the construction, once it's over, the parking would take place in the driveway. Now, if the neighbors talk to the chief and the petition is successful and the chief decides to post the road, then that's a different matter. Everybody have to go by whatever is posted.
Do we have any roads posted that you know?
No, we don't.
I've never seen.
It's one of the concerns.
Not even
actually.
in the town center?
No, not really. I mean, we had some no parking signs, and we're actually talking to DOT about that now. It's been about a year actually talking to them about that, so.
We do have temporary, I mean, they have the right to put up temporary signs. I mean, I know on my street alone, whenever there's a festival of any type in town, they put up temporaries,
Yeah.
no parking restricted.
Because typically those
Yes.
cardboardy type signs, you know?
Correct.
Once they start getting into the permanent signs, they start talking about cost and so on, enforcement. So all that goes into whatever the chief considers, I'm sure.
Is that, did he state your
Mm-hmm.
motion correctly?
Can I ask a question of the applicant?
You know, ask me.
Okay, then never mind.
Okay. We can get an answer to that, just.
Oh, I just wanted to make sure that, I mean, he understands that the concerns that the residents have, and that he'll, since he lives right next to the possible subdivision, that he makes every effort to appease them.
Okay, I'll make sure that he understands that as part of the decision.
I think he's probably, the applicant's probably got a sense of that in the last 2
I would
days.
suspect.
I don't know, I think he's a deaf mute, I haven't heard anything.
That's good. We have a motion, we don't have a second here.
I'll second the motion.
Discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried, unanimous.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for the time.
Thanks.
This is for Mike Glidden.
Mr. Chairman, the second matter on the agenda this evening,
Just so the record's clean, here's a copy of the plan, here's the public hearing.
applicant has asked that the hearing not be open because they have to go to the Wetlands Commission first. And they thought that going to the Planning Commission and back to Wetlands and back to Planning, they wanted to make sure that you understood that, with all due respect, that they would just simply request the hearing not be open this evening, but it be open at your next meeting after they finish with Wetlands. Thank you.
Hiram, can I just ask a general question? Is this at all related to Tanager Way or the other Ellsworth subdivision?
Well, it's a portion of the same property up in the corner, up
On top of the,
That's right.
not down on East Westock, it's up on top of the hill where there was a problem before affording the open space.
Well,
When we-
yeah, there was originally, when that was originally approved, the remainder of the property was gonna be purchased by the land trust.
Correct.
I think the funding for that didn't work out, and they can explain that to you during the hearing, but that's my understanding as
That
well.
would happen the last time they came in front of us
That's right.
for that approval.
That's right. And I think they talked about, sort of, we had an informal on this, I think.
Yeah, we had an
Yeah. And so they talked about what they were thinking about, and it's approximately that shape, but they'll, once they finish with wetlands, they'll be back with the details on that at your next meeting.
So do we need to take action, or we're not
Tabling.
opening, we're tabling, right?
Just not opening, correct.
I'll come in next time. Communication, administrative business. And then the first item we always want to ask about is the supermarket in the north end of town.
Well, the last I heard was, and this was about a week ago, that it was gonna close within 2 weeks. So I can only tell you that that's what I was told most recently. The easement documents that needed to be signed have been signed, and there's nothing else preventing that from taking place now. So my understanding is it's still ready to close very soon.
Anything else? Mr. Drake?
Yes, let's move on to the minutes. We're here to approve the minutes of the October 14th meeting of the zoning commission. I mean of the planning commission. Do I hear any changes, deletions, or on page 1? Any on page 2?
Excuse me, one question. Did you come in after Ron was seated
No.
at the last meeting?
No.
Oh, that's right, you were away. Okay, all right.
Anything on page 2? Page 3? Page 4? Page 5? Page 6? Page 7? Hearing none, I'd like to have a motion to accept the minutes.
I'll move.
Second.
We have a second. All in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye.
Any opposed? Minutes passed.
One abstention, Dennis. I wasn't at the meeting, Mark, so.
Okay, we have 5 approvals and 1 abstention. Thank you, gentlemen.
I make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second?
Let's vote them down.
Okay, any discussion or motion? It's been made and seconded. Discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Funding for Simsbury Community Television is provided in part by contributions from viewers like you. Thank you.